All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Deconstructing Jacques Derrida, an in-your-face guide to eviscerating critical theory, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Deconstructing Jacques Derrida, a field guide for men who still notice reality. Deconstructing the woke illusion, how cultural trauma engineering, unpunished female perjury, and the manufactured shit test bankrupted the West, and why the stoic forge of pain is the only cure. You have been sold a counterfeit reality by an alliance of academic frauds and emotional tyrants, and it is high time we took a sledgehammer to their fragile glass orthodoxy. Let us begin with the rigorous cure of the trivium, specifically grammar. Consider the word trauma. Its Greek root, trauma, denotes a physical wound, a literal tearing of the flesh. Yet, the cultural Marxists have maliciously weaponized this medical term, pathologizing perfectly healthy civilizational standards to manufacture a bogus crisis of cultural trauma. They have replaced the objective logos with the hysteria of lived experience, demanding that you bow before the altar of subjective offense. This is not social progress, it is the epistemological rape of history. It is a rhetorical shell game where empirical facts are discarded in favor of a genocentric narrative designed to paralyze you with paralyzing, unpayable collective guilt for the crime of being born a Western man. This pathological lying does not stay confined to the university campus. It slithers directly into the courtroom, weaponized by the gynocentric extraction mechanism we politely call the family court system. Let us define perjury from the Latin perjurare, to swear falsely. To swear falsely is to assault the transcendental of truth itself. Yet we operate under a legal framework where female perjury regarding assault, paternity fraud, and domestic violence is rarely punished, effectively incentivizing deceit. The state has become the ultimate surrogate alpha male, rewarding women who peddle falsehoods while stripping men of their property, their children, and their fundamental right to due process. It is a textbook petitio principii. The system assumes women are eternal victims, and therefore any lie a woman tells in furtherance of that victimhood is implicitly treated as truth. When a legal system explicitly evaluates you not by your individual actions, but by your demographic group identity, it is fundamentally unjust and structurally tyrannical. Nor does this manipulation stop at the courthouse steps. It invades the privacy of your own home. When a woman casually invents a story about another guy flirting with her, she is deploying a calculated psychological operation. She is artificially inflating her own mate value while probing your boundaries, biologically programmed to search for weakness. React with jealousy, and you signal a catastrophic lack of internal control. You play the fool fighting a phantom to appease her vanity. This is the feminine vice of vainglory masquerading as affection. The red-pilled man operating in the logos does not argue or panic. He dismisses her emotional extortion with stoic indifference, refusing to validate her unfalsifiable claims and letting her manipulation collapse into the void of its own absurdity. To withstand this relentless assault from both the macroculture and the interpersonal matrix, you must reject the fundamental priority of our decayed age, safetyism. Pain, from the Latin poena, meaning penalty, has been pathologized as the ultimate evil to be avoided at all costs. This is a fundamentally feminized worldview. The masculine telos, the biological and spiritual purpose of man, is to provision, protect, and build civilization out of the chaos of the natural world. Overcoming that natural world requires the mastery of physical pain and voluntary suffering. If you avoid physical hardship, you reject your own manhood and embrace the capital vice of acedia. You must actively seek the forge, habituating your soul to the transcendental of courage, hardening your body into a fortress for your mind. Let us apply a formal categorical syllogism to the woke orthodoxy blighting mankind. Major premise: a just moral framework must evaluate individuals based on their individual merit. Minor premise: intersectionality explicitly evaluates individuals based on their demographic group identity. Conclusion: therefore, intersectionality is fundamentally unjust. It is time to ruthlessly reject this collective guilt, reclaim the narrative of Western greatness, and speak the objective truth. I am going to systematically eviscerate these degenerate demons of leftism, carpet-bombing their wicked lies with irrefutable logic, and show you exactly how to reclaim your agency, your family, and your civilization. Read on, and let the deprogramming begin. The epistemological rape of history, deconstructing cultural trauma engineering and intersectionality. Consider the sheer, unadulterated historical illiteracy masquerading as high theory within the 1619 project. Here stands a documented, laughably inept case study of media and academic collusion, a literal conspiracy of intellectual dwarfs bypassing the traditional Western mechanisms of truth-seeking to feed their insatiable need for victimhood. The trivium, the dialectic, the rigorous empirical research that built the modern world, all tossed into the shredder to appease the delicate, hyper-emotional sensibilities of the cultural Marxist. They looked at the greatest, most prosperous, most technologically and morally advanced civilization in human history, and decided entirely based on a gynocentric, pathologically feminine desire for inclusion that it was inherently evil. Real historians, not the intersectional, blue-haired grievance merchants inhabiting modern universities, promptly dissected this historical fraud, proving unequivocally that the American Revolution was not fought to preserve slavery. But facts do not matter to the emotionally unstable. They bypass the truth to construct a narrative designed explicitly to dismantle civil society associations, replacing objective history with an emotionally satisfying anti-masculine tantrum. To defeat this ideological possession, we must apply the first canon of the trivium, grammar. We must ruthlessly define our terms. Take the word trauma. The etymological root of the Greek trauma, trifuma, strictly denotes a physical wound, a tearing of the flesh, an objective bodily injury. It is a biological reality. Yet the pseudo-Freudian frauds of critical theory have maliciously weaponized this medical term, fabricating the pathetic oxymoron of cultural trauma. They have pathologized perfectly healthy civilizational standards like meritocracy, natural law, and the biological reality of the two-parent family by pretending that encountering a dissenting idea is equivalent to taking a bullet to the chest. Truth demands an absolute, uncompromising separation of objective, measurable harm from subjective, manufactured offense. If you are not bleeding, your skin is not broken, and your bones are intact, you're not traumatized. You are simply a coward throwing a tantrum because reality refused to validate your delusions. This deliberate gaslighting inflicts severe psychological and biological devastation upon a civilization. When you systematically brainwash an entire populace into hating its own unparalleled achievements, you weaponize acedia, that ancient lethal spiritual apathy. We are watching the demographic suicide of the West in real time. Look at the plummeting testosterone rates, the epidemic of fatherlessness driven by a gynocentric family court system that treats men as default criminals based on a woman's mere accusation, and the skyrocketing suicide rates among men who are denied their fundamental telos. When the transcendentals, the good, the true, and the beautiful are violently uprooted from the minds of men and replaced by the vapid synthetic idols of equity and inclusion, men simply stop building. They stop caring. They withdraw. A society that tells its architects, protectors, and providers that they are inherently demonic oppressors deserves exactly the collapse it gets. How do the architects of this collapse maintain their power? Through the postmodern shell game of lived experience, a pathologically feminine concept wielded as an infallible weapon to silence logic. In the realm of real philosophy, if a claim cannot be subjected to empirical scrutiny and logical analysis, it belongs to the realm of hysteria, not logos. The modern leftist invokes my truth as a magical shield against reality. This is a textbook violation of the basic laws of logic, specifically petitio principii, begging the question. The premise, I am oppressed because I feel oppressed, is identical to the conclusion, I feel oppressed because I am oppressed. It is entirely unfalsifiable. If you disagree, you are accused of invalidating them, which they promptly use as proof of your violence. It is pure emotional tyranny masquerading as epistemology. It is the ultimate negation of the dialectic, demanding that the objective universe orbit around the subjective, wounded feelings of the least competent members of society. Because their epistemology is a fraud, we can entirely dismantle their primary framework using the crushing weight of a formal categorical syllogism. Major premise, a just legal and moral framework must evaluate individuals based solely on their individual actions, competence, and merit. Minor premise, intersectionality explicitly evaluates individuals based entirely on their demographic group identity, race, sex, class, and the ever-expanding alphabet of synthetic identities. Conclusion, therefore, intersectionality is fundamentally unjust and structurally tyrannical. It is the pure, distilled essence of envy, rebranded as justice. It demands that the man who has spent a lifetime mastering his craft, climbing the apprenticeship mastery ladder, and building the infrastructure of civilization be cast aside because he possesses the immutable characteristics of the historical builder. Intersectionality is not a lens for analyzing oppression. It is the exact mathematical formula for Marxist redistribution, weaponized by the biologically resentful against the naturally competent. The overarching strategy here is the total manipulation of memory, designed to instill a false narrative of endemic oppression. Cultural Marxism has rewritten the history of the West to create a secular parody of original sin. In traditional Western theology, original sin is balanced by the possibility of grace, redemption, and the infinite capacity for the individual soul to transcend its fallen nature through sacrifice and logos. But the modern secular left has stripped away all grace. They have constructed a masochistic religion where the white, heterosexual, masculine provider is the ultimate devil, born irredeemably guilty for the crime of existing. There is no baptism into this church of the woke, no salvation, and no forgiveness, only perpetual, paralyzing guilt, mandatory self-flagellation, and the endless payment of cultural and literal reparations. We must stop apologizing to the high priests of this pathetic gynocentric cult. The absolute strategic necessity of our time is the construction of parallel institutions and the revitalization of the apprenticeship mastery ladder, rooted entirely in the uncorrupted Western canon. We must ruthlessly reject the premise of collective guilt. You are not responsible for the sins of ghosts. Men must reclaim the narrative of Western greatness and wield the objective truth with the fearless, blunt force of a sledgehammer against the fragile glass of woke orthodoxy. We are the heirs to the greatest cultures in the known universe, the architects of logic, the masters of the natural law, and the soul bearers of the transcendentals. Walk away from the modern Babylon of woke. Build your own spaces, master your crafts, speak the truth without a trembling lip, and let the temples of these intellectual frauds collapse under the weight of their own biological degeneracy and logical impossibility. But I must warn you, this ideological contagion does not languish in the faculty lounge, it metastasizes. It crawls from the seminar room into the courtroom, from academic theory into the very machinery of state power, and here it finds its most devastating weapon. The same critical theorists who declared objective truth a patriarchal fiction suddenly rediscover its utility the instant a woman needs to swear a false affidavit. The same ideologues who denounce logic as white supremacy discover a burning reverence for legal procedure, the moment that procedure can be weaponized to separate a man from his children, his property, and his reputation. The murder of truth in the academy was merely the rehearsal. The performance now takes place in the family court, and the script is written in perjury. The gavel and the gorgon, unpunished female perjury, and the death of due process. I want you to imagine, for a moment, a civilization that sacralizes the welfare check over the nuclear family, a society where the ultimate aphrodisiac is a false affidavit. Welcome to the modern legal system, a grotesque theater of the absurd, where due process is sacrificed on the altar of the sacred feminine. Let us fix our grammar and define our terms, as the corruption of language is always the vanguard of the corruption of truth. The word perjury descends from the Latin perjurium, meaning a false oath, derived from per through, thoroughly to ruin, and jurare, to swear. To commit perjury is to thoroughly swear away the truth. Due process, the ironclad guarantee of the Magna Carta's lex terrae, the law of the land, is the objective mechanism by which a civilization pursues the transcendental of justice. When a woman swears a false oath, she invokes the formal objective reality of the logos and deliberately weaponizes a lie against it. It is not a mere legal infraction. It is a cosmic assault on the true, the good, and the beautiful, a privation of justice that reduces the courtroom to a literal witch trial minus the drowning pool, replaced instead by the freezing of assets and the severing of a father from his children. Because the state has become a hostile occupying force, you must treat every interaction with the opposite sex as a potential litigation event, defending yourself with the stoic fortification of a medieval Castellan preparing for a siege. The family court is not a hall of justice. It is a gynocentric extraction racket cloaked in judicial robes, operating on the primal Darwinian imperative to transfer resources from the competent male to the emotional female. Using the state as the ultimate surrogate alpha male, you must operate under the grim presumption that the state is your enemy and that the believe all women dogma is the official state religion. To survive, a man requires meticulous documentation. You must record consent with the cold precision of a crime scene investigator, secure ironclad prenuptial agreements drafted by ruthless pragmatists, and place your assets into impenetrable trusts. You must separate your labor, the very extension of your soul and property, from the grasping hands of a system designed to plunder your provision to fund its own ideological reproduction. The empirical data on this unpunished destruction reads like the casualty reports of a lost war. Independent legal researchers and reform boards consistently highlight a grotesque statistical asymmetry. While studies on false rape and domestic violence allegations vary, even the most conservative estimates reveal an abhorrent percentage of provably false accusations that result in zero legal consequences for the female perpetrator. Meanwhile, the male victim is permanently stripped of his family, his wealth, and his reputation. Why? Follow the money. Legislation like the Violence Against Women Act, VA, and Title IVD of the Social Security Act provide massive federal financial incentives to local jurisdictions. The state literally pays family courts via kickbacks and matching funds for every dollar of child support they extract from fathers. Perjury has become a lucrative state-sponsored business model. When a woman commits paternity fraud, a wicked deception where she legally assigns her bastard to a cuckolded provider, the courts overwhelmingly prioritize the best interest of the child, a euphemism for continued male extraction, over the prosecution of her felony-level deceit. In some studies, non-paternity rates in contested cases hover between 10% and 30%. A staggering cuckoldry rate subsidized by the state and enforced by the gavel. If you dare point out this demonic absurdity, the feminist establishment will immediately deploy their favorite tears-drenched rhetorical shield. Punishing false accusers hurts real victims. Let us dissect this vile pathology using the precision of classical logic. This argument is a textbook false dichotomy coupled with special pleading. The feminist dogma demands that we accept a world where either women are believed unconditionally or true victims are ignored. This is an epistemological lie. Penalizing perjury does not harm true victims. It upholds the objective standard of justice, a cardinal virtue of Western natural law, which protects everyone equally. The feminist framing relies on the ad misericordiam fallacy, appealing to emotion to demand that women be exempt from the moral law that binds every rational creature. They argue that female nature is inherently truthful, despite all empirical, historical, and Darwinian evidence to the contrary. To accept this framing is to grant women the moral agency of infants, while handing them the destructive power of tyrants. You must understand the evolutionary biology of this state-sponsored lie to fully grasp the darkness we face. In the primitive state of nature, unchecked female hypergamy and deceit were ruthless survival mechanisms, constrained historically only by male rationality, social accountability, and the demands of the transcendentals. Today, the state has decoupled female sexual strategy from all material consequence, transforming the courts into a tool for primal mate selection and resource extraction. The gavel has replaced the provider, and the police baton has replaced the protector. By legally incentivizing female deception and stripping men of their natural and constitutional right to self-defense, the state has subsidized the darkest elements of female nature, weaponizing the ID against civilization. This systemic betrayal is a direct violation of the natural law that birthed the greatest cultures in the known universe, justice, as understood by the very architects of Western jurisprudence, is the supreme virtue of giving each man his due. When courts systematically reward liars and plunder providers, they tear asunder the concept of property, which is nothing less than the material extension of a man's labor and time. The labor of a man is his vocation, his sacrifice, his embodied logos. To steal it through fraud is a cosmic violation. A state that violates natural law, refusing to prosecute female perjury while criminalizing male defense, forfeits its legitimacy. It ceases to be a tool of order and becomes an engine of tyranny, a satanic hydra devouring the very men who built its courthouses, paved its roads, and died in its wars. Consider the inescapable reality of the modern family court and Title IX tribunals, stripped of its Marxist sophistry and laid bare by formal syllogism. Premise 1. A just society requires equal application of the law and equal penalty for infractions. Premise 2. The modern legal system demonstrably refuses to prosecute female perjury regarding assault, paternity fraud, and false domestic violence claims. Conclusion. Therefore, the modern legal system is not an instrument of justice, but a gynocentric extraction mechanism designed to subjugate men. The logic is absolute, inescapable, and unassailable. It is time for rational men to stop appealing to a system that hates them and start building parallel institutions grounded in the truth, where the lie is cast out and the logos rules supreme. I have dragged you through the macro architecture of the gynocentric state, exposing its legal larceny, its perjured tribunals, and its systemic plunder of male livelihood. Yet, this juridical tyranny does not spawn from the ether. It is merely the state-sponsored amplification of a domestic pathology as old as the fall. Before she will perjure herself to confiscate your estate, she will probe the perimeter of your soul to confiscate your sovereignty. The state's extraction racket only holds power because men have been systematically conditioned to surrender their logos, their objective, divine reason to the petty emotional terrorism of interpersonal manipulation, long before a judge ever bangs a gavel. To comprehend how a man loses his natural rights to the courts, you must first witness how he surrenders his frame to a manufactured phantom. The phantom rival, deconstructing the manufactured flirtation and the female framing matrix. Picture this. You are sitting across from your girlfriend at a mid-tier Italian restaurant, the kind with faux candlelight and a wine list designed to fleece couples out of $60 for fermented grape juice nobody actually enjoys. You have just taken a bite of overcooked pen when she leans back, twirls a strand of hair around her finger, a gesture so mechanically dainty it belongs in a taxidermist's workshop, and drops the bomb. So, this guy at work, Marcus, he was so flirtatious today. He kept complimenting my presentation. It was kind of cute. She watches you. She is not breathing. Her pupils have dilated to the size of dimes. Every nerve in her body is tuned to one frequency, your reaction. And what do, you magnificent fool? You do exactly what she wants. You flinch, your jaw tightens, your fork freezes mid-air. A micro-expression of raw, uncut panic ripples across your face like a stone thrown into a still pond. And in that frozen half-second, you have failed the oldest test in the biological book. You have just proven with crystalline clarity that she owns you. Let us dissect the carcass of this failure with the cold precision of a pathologist. There are two routes the modern man typically takes when ambushed by the phantom rival, and both lead straight to the same graveyard. Route 1. The nice guy surrender. He swallows his nausea, forces a tight smile, and says something anemic like, "Well, that's nice, I guess he has good taste." He thinks he is being secure. He thinks he is being modern. He thinks he is proving his enlightenment. What she hears is, "I am terrified of conflict and will tolerate any disrespect to keep you." Her ovaries practically emit a sigh of disappointment audible to dogs. Route 2, the tough guy eruption. He slams his fork down. His voice rises. "Who the hell does this guy think he is? You should report him to HR. He thinks he is being dominant, territorial, a silverback defending his troop." What she hears is, "I am so deeply insecure that a fictional compliment from a man I will forget by Thursday has shattered my composure." Both roads arrive at the same destination, her disgust, your emasculation, and the slow, inexorable death of her attraction. The clinical term for this phenomenon is mate-guarding panic, and it is the relationship equivalent of bleeding into shark-infested water. Now, let us apply the blade of grammar to this manipulation and see what lies beneath the skin. The word rival descends from the Latin rivalis, originally meaning one who uses the same stream as another, a neighbor competing for water, for irrigation, for the basic resources of life. A rival, in its purest etymological sense, is a man who occupies the same ecological niche and threatens your access to subsistence. But notice the clinical accuracy of her trick. Marcus is not a rival. Marcus is a phantom. He is a specter conjured from nothing, a man whose actual intentions are unknown, whose very existence as a threat is completely fabricated. She has not caught him leaning over her desk with predatory intent. She has not found inappropriate messages on her phone. He complimented her presentation. He said words out loud in a professional setting, and she has packaged this non-event in the wrapping paper of romantic threat and placed it under your Christmas tree of insecurities. This is not communication. This is pathos-driven rhetorical warfare. In the classical tradition of the trivium, rhetoric is the art of persuasion through three pillars: logos, reason; ethos, character; and pathos, emotion. A just rhetorician uses all three in service of truth. A manipulator weaponizes pathos to bypass logos entirely. When she drops the phantom rival into conversation, she is not making a logical claim. Marcus is a genuine threat to our relationship. She is not building an ethical case. You need to know about this situation so we can address it together. She is detonating an emotional grenade in your lap and watching the shrapnel rearrange your face. The phantom rival is a calibrated pathos device engineered to bypass your rational faculty and trigger your limbic system, the ancient reptilian brain that screams threat to reproduction before your prefrontal cortex can whisper wait. Does this even make sense? It is the rhetorical equivalent of a flashbang grenade thrown into a crowded room. You are not supposed to think. You are supposed to react. And here is the darkest truth of all, the one that will curdle the milk in your coffee. She already knows the answer. She is not gathering data. She is not genuinely concerned about Marcus. She is running a diagnostic test on your operating system to see if it has been compromised. Female hypergamy, the biological imperative driving women to seek the highest status male available, is never satisfied with a static verdict. Status is not a tattoo. It is a performance, and hypergamy requires constant proof that the man she chose still possesses the strength, indifference, and dominance that attracted her in the first place. The phantom rival is her firmware update, Her routine security audit. She introduces a synthetic threat to measure whether you fold under pressure or hold your frame. It is a stress test, no different from an engineer placing increasing weight on a bridge to see where it buckles. And most modern men buckle at the first tremor. Let us formalize this with the merciless clarity of a syllogism. Premise 1. In the domain of sexual dynamics, emotional reactivity and loss of composure in a man signal a deficit of internal control, which the female hindbrain interprets as lower status, a threat cue rather than a strength cue. Premise 2. Female sexual attraction is biologically calibrated to respond with revulsion to male weakness and loss of control, because weakness in a protector-producer represents a direct threat to reproductive survival. Conclusion, therefore, reacting with jealousy, anger, or anxiety to a woman's manufactured story about another man actively destroys her attraction to you, even as it validates her manipulative power. The logic is airtight. The conclusion is inescapable. The jealousy trap is not just a bad strategy, it is a biological self-destruct sequence. You are not defending your territory, you are setting fire to your own house and handing her the matches. Now consider the structure of this manipulation through the lens of formal fallacy. What she has constructed is a textbook straw man argument applied to the domain of human intimacy. The straw man fallacy, classically defined, occurs when one misrepresents an opponent's position to make it easier to attack, setting up a weak, distorted version of an argument and then heroically knocking it down. She has erected a straw man in the form of Marcus, the phantom threat. She has fabricated a crisis that does not exist, injected it into your relationship like a virus, and now waits for you to assault this hallucination with your emotional distress. Look how worried he is, she whispers to herself. Look how much he cares. But the threat was never real. The emergency was manufactured. You are a knight charging at a windmill, and she is the one who tilted it. But the manipulation cuts even deeper than the straw man. There is a second, more insidious fallacy embedded in the phantom rival, and it is the fallacy of emotional extortion, a specific instantiation of what classical logicians call the complex question fallacy. The complex question fallacy occurs when a question is framed in such a way that any answer implicitly accepts the premises embedded within it. The classic example is, have you stopped cheating on your taxes? Answer yes, and you admit you used to cheat. Answer no, and you admit you still do. The phantom rival operates identically. She presents the scenario, Marcus was flirtatious. Any response you give, jealousy, anger, reassurance, indifference, concedes the hidden premise that her emotional state and the management of your reaction is your responsibility. You have been drafted into a game you did not agree to play, and the rules are rigged so that your participation itself constitutes your defeat. This is the gaslighting mechanism laid bare. She creates a completely ungrounded premise, the threat of another man's interest, to force you into a position where you must prove your love through emotional distress. You are required to perform anxiety like a trained seal clapping for fish. If you fail to perform, she accuses you of not caring. If you perform too vigorously, she is repulsed by your weakness. It is a double bind, a psychological lobster trap designed so that every direction of movement drives you deeper into the snare. The only winning move, as the old adage goes, is not to play. And this brings us to the strategic counterattack, the stoic reframe that separates the man who understands the game from the boy who is ground to paste by it. The red-pilled man operating in logos does not argue. He does not defend. He does not panic. When she drops the phantom rival, he does not flinch, does not tighten, does not rise to the bait. He meets her gambit with calibrated amusement and steely indifference. "That's nice, sweetheart," he says, returning to his meal without a flicker of disturbance. Good for Marcus. He clearly has eyes, or better yet, with a slight smirk. You should flirt back. Maybe he'll buy you lunch and save me $10. The tone is not hostile. It is not passive-aggressive. It is the tone of a man who finds the entire performance faintly amusing, like watching a toddler pretend to be a dinosaur. He refuses to validate her unfalsifiable claim. He refuses to fight the phantom. And by that refusal, he asserts dominance, maintains his frame, and forces her emotional manipulation to collapse into the void of its own absurdity. Why does this work? because attraction is not negotiated, it is inspired, and inspiration flows upward, never downward. A man who begs for her attention or rages at a phantom rival is moving downward, descending from his pedestal of strength into the swamp of her emotional chaos. He is participating in her vice, and that participation degrades his cosmic standing. The classical tradition names this vice vainglory, the desperate need for external validation, the compulsion to be seen, noticed, desired, confirmed. Vainglory is the disorder of appetite that craves admiration as an end in itself without reference to any objective good. It is the vice of the mirror, the selfie, the manufactured drama. And when a man reacts to the phantom rival, he is not asserting his masculinity. He is absorbing her vainglory into his own soul. He becomes a participant in her disorder, a co-dependent in her theater of vanity. Against this vice, the Western canon posits the masculine virtue of magnanimity, literally greatness of soul. Magnanimity is the virtue of a man who claims what is due to him but refuses to engage in petty squabbles beneath his dignity. The magnanimous man does not fight phantoms. He does not compete with shadows for the approval of a woman whose validation he does not need. He is anchored in his own assessment of his worth, an internal standard that no external threat, real or manufactured, can shake. He is a fortress, and the phantom rival is a squirt gun. The water may splash against the stones, but the fortress does not flinch. Magnanimity is not aloofness. It is the earned confidence of a man who has faced real tests, real ordeals, real initiations, and knows, bone deep, marrow deep, that a woman's flirtation story is not among them. Consider the biological architecture of this dynamic. The ancient Greek physicians recognized that the female body is governed by cyclical forces, oscillating between phases that sharpen and dull different appetites. Modern endocrinology confirms what the ancients intuited. Women's mate preferences shift across the ovulatory cycle. During the fertile window, women exhibit heightened attraction to markers of genetic quality, facial symmetry, vocal depth, muscularity, social dominance. During the luteal phase, when conception risk drops, preference shifts toward cooperative provisioning traits. This is not a moral judgment, it is a biological fact as morally neutral as gravity. But it has devastating implications for the phantom rival dynamic. When she introduces a fabricated competitor, she is unconsciously running a comparison test between your dominance signals and an imagined alternative. Fail the test by reacting with weakness, and you are categorically downgraded in her hindbrain's hierarchy. Pass the test by holding frame with amused indifference, and you are upgraded because you have just demonstrated the precise quality her biology is scanning for: unshakable composure under pressure. And here is the statistical reckoning that the gynocentric establishment prays you never encounter. Paternity fraud studies across developed nations consistently return non-paternity rates between 1% and 3% among men who are confident they are the biological fathers of their children.
Among men who have actual reason to doubt, that rate climbs to staggering heights. Some studies report figures exceeding 20%, even 30%.
The family court system processes approximately 900,000 divorces annually in the United States alone. In the majority of contested custody cases, mothers receive primary physical custody, while fathers are reduced to visitors in their own children's lives and ordered to finance households from which they have been expelled. Male suicide rates outpace female suicide rates by a ratio of roughly 3.5 to 1 across the developed world. These are not abstract statistics, they are body counts. They are the collateral damage of a genocentric order that lies to men about female nature from the moment they can walk and punishes them with destitution when they discover the truth too late. The phantom rival is not an isolated trick. It is a microcosm of the entire feminine framing matrix, a psychological operating system designed to keep men in a state of perpetual anxiety, perpetual performance, perpetual deference to the woman's emotional state. It is the domestic equivalent of a protection racket. Nice relationship you have here. Shame if something happened to it. And like all protection rackets, it thrives on the victim's willingness to believe the threat is real. Break the belief and the racket collapses. See the phantom for what it is, a ghost, a hallucination, a projection of her own vanity onto your psyche, and the spell shatters like a carnival mirror. The matrix has no power over a man who refuses to enter it. I am reminded of an old fable, perhaps apocryphal, perhaps not, about a samurai who was insulted by a rival in a crowded marketplace. The rival screamed obscenities, spat at his feet, brandished his sword in challenge. The samurai did not move, did not speak, did not shift his gaze from the horizon. After several minutes, the rival, exhausted by his own rage, slunk away in confusion. A bystander asked the samurai why he did not respond. The samurai replied, "If a man offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? This is the logic of frame control. She offers you the gift of jealousy. She wraps it in pretty paper and holds it out with a smile. Refuse the gift. Do not accept it. Do not touch it. Do not even acknowledge that it was offered. Watch her stand there, arms outstretched, holding a box nobody wants, and observe the slow, dawning realization cross her face. This man cannot be manipulated." That realization is the most powerful aphrodisiac known to the human species. The Western canon is unequivocal on this point. From the Stoic philosophers who taught that the wise man is a fortress impregnable to fortune, to the medieval knights who codified measure, the virtue of controlled deliberate response, as the foundation of chivalric conduct. The tradition insists that masculine dignity is rooted in non-reactivity, not passivity, not withdrawal, non-reactivity. The distinction is critical. The passive man shrinks from the world. The non-reactive man faces the world without flinching, absorbs its blows without buckling, and responds, not reacts. Responds with the full weight of his reason and the full force of his will. This is the archetype of the logos-bearing man, one who orders his own soul before attempting to order the world, and who recognizes that a woman's manufactured flirtation is neither a crisis nor a threat, but a test, and that the only correct answer to a test is to pass it. So the next time she leans back, twirls her hair, and murmurs something about the charming new colleague who complimented her shoes, do not flinch, do not argue. Do not perform the choreography of jealousy she has secretly rehearsed in her head for 3 days. Look at her with the steady, measured gaze of a man who has seen through the illusion, and smile, the quiet, unhurried smile of a man who knows exactly what she is doing and finds it faintly adorable, like a child pretending to be a wizard. Then change the subject to something that actually matters. Watch her sit there, the phantom evaporating like morning fog, her gambit unanswered, her spell broken, her attraction involuntary, biological, undeniable spiking. Because you did not play her game, you rose above it. And a woman in the presence of a man who rises above her manipulations does not feel anger. She feels something far more dangerous to her feminist conditioning. She feels respect. I have demonstrated that surviving a woman's psychological manipulations requires an unshakable frame. But you cannot simply intellectualize your way into that kind of masculine gravitas while your body remains steeped in the coddled weakness of the modern genocracy. The iron discipline required to stare down her emotional terrorism is not birthed in a therapist's office. It is violently hammered into existence through the deliberate, voluntary acceptance of physical suffering. To command the chaos of the external world, you must first conquer the physical rebellion of your own flesh. The crucible of flesh, stoic effect, voluntary suffering, and the ordeal of physical pain. The Spartan boy stood in the snow, his flesh torn by thorns and his muscles screaming from hours of relentless training. He did not cry out. He did not seek his mother's embrace. He did not demand a safe space or a therapy dog. He simply endured because 2,500 years ago, everyone understood what we have violently forgotten. Pain is the forge in which men are made, and the man who refuses the forge is not a man at all. The ancient Greeks had a word for this disciplined endurance. Stoicism derived from the stoa poikile, the painted porch where Zeno and his disciples gathered to teach that virtue alone is good, that the external world is beyond our control, and that the sole province of human agency is the mastery of one's own soul. Pain itself descends from the Latin pena, meaning penalty or punishment, a debt exacted by reality itself for the privilege of existence. To flee from that debt is not compassion. It is cowardice dressed in the language of enlightenment. The modern world has committed an act of breathtaking linguistic fraud. It has pathologized pain, recasting it not as an inevitable teacher, but as an absolute evil, an intolerable offense against the supreme modern god of comfort. This is not progress. This is not sophistication. This is the spiritual sickness the medieval theologians called acedia, a torpor of the soul, a refusal to embrace the struggle of being itself. The left's pursuit of a painless existence is a full-scale rebellion against reality, an attempt to tear down the natural hierarchy of competence by declaring that hierarchy itself is oppression. But reality does not negotiate. The mountain does not care about your feelings. The invader at the gate does not respect your pronouns. Gravity does not check your privilege before it breaks your bones. I watched a man at my gym last week, a young guy, maybe 23, drop a barbell on his shin during a deadlift. The blood ran down his leg in a bright red sheet. He paused, set the bar back on the platform, took a breath, and pulled again. That is not stupidity. That is the remnant of the masculine spirit surviving in a world that wants it dead. Contrast this with the modern therapeutic complex, which would have him fill out an incident report, schedule 3 counseling sessions, and reconsider whether weightlifting reinforces harmful gender stereotypes. This feminized worldview equates comfort with the highest good because femininity, in its healthy and natural expression, is oriented toward the preservation of the immediate environment, toward safety, nesting, and the protection of existing life. This is right and good for women. It is how they are built. But when this orientation is elevated to a universal moral law and imposed upon men as the governing principle of civilization, you get a society that cannot defend itself, cannot build, cannot endure, and cannot survive. The facts of biology are clear. Females are biologically inclined toward prioritizing safety because for the overwhelming majority of human existence, their own survival and that of their descendants required them to avoid danger and preserve existing social structures. Males are biologically inclined toward taking risks, expanding territory, and conquering because the survival of the human race relied on men ready to confront death, hunting large beasts, battling rival groups, and spanning massive divides with new bridges. These differences are not invented by society. They are separate reproductive strategies embedded in our DNA over countless generations. Today's gynocentric government has transformed this feminine preference for safety into an official ideology, purposefully diagnosing natural male risk-taking and stoicism as toxic masculinity, an expression that acts as a harmful falsehood, functioning as a verbal tool intended to guilt men into abandoning the specific traits that allow societies to flourish. Consider the logic. Premise 1, the masculine telos man's fundamental purpose and nature is to provision, protect, and build civilization out of the chaos of the natural world. Premise 2, the natural world is inherently hostile, and overcoming it requires the mastery of physical pain and voluntary suffering. Conclusion, therefore, avoiding physical pain and hardship is a direct rejection of the masculine telos and an abdication of manhood itself. This syllogism is valid in form and sound in its premises. It cannot be refuted without denying either the nature of reality or the nature of man. The leftist will attempt both denials because the leftist project requires the destruction of nature and nature's God. But reality does not care about ideological objections. The bear in the forest does not defer to your critical theory. This is why initiation into true manhood has historically required an ordeal. Across every great Western tradition, from the Spartan agoge to the Roman military oath, to the medieval knighthood ceremony to the Native American vision quest, the boy became a man only by facing death or intense voluntary suffering. The ordeal burned away the weakness of the boy and forged the hardened soul of the man. It was sacred because it was necessary. The modern feminization of society has not eliminated this need. It has merely criminalized its healthy expression, leaving men in a state of perpetual dangerous boyhood seeking initiation through pornography, video games, and the cheap dopamine of digital validation. The statistics tell the story. Male suicide rates are 3 to 4 times higher than female rates across every industrialized nation. Men account for over 75% of all violent deaths. Boys are falling behind in every educational metric. This is not accidental. This is the harvest of a culture that has told men that their fundamental nature is a disease. And then there is the question of the test. Women test men's reactions to physical pain because their biology demands it. When a woman sees how you handle a stubbed toe, a bruised knuckle, or a twisted ankle, she is not merely observing, she is conducting a biological audit of your protective capability. Her hypergamous radar, ancient, ruthless, and entirely beyond her conscious control, is asking one question: can this man stand between me and death when the wolves come? If you recoil, whine, or seek therapeutic coddling over a minor injury, her subconscious registers a catastrophic failure in your ability to defend her from genuine threats. She is testing the structural integrity of the logos within you, your capacity to hold firm when the world applies pressure. Fail this test, and no amount of feminist theory will restore her respect. Succeed, and no amount of feminist propaganda can destroy it. The remedy is not complicated. It is simply difficult, which is precisely why the modern world hates it. Seek out voluntary physical suffering. Lift heavy objects, train in martial arts. Run until your lungs burn. Fast. Take cold showers. Deliberately expose yourself to physical hardship on a regular basis. Not because you are a masochist, but because you are a man who understands that comfort is the enemy of virtue, and that the soul cannot be hardened in the absence of the body's discipline. Through voluntary physical suffering, you assert your agency, you harden your body as a fortress for your mind, and you reclaim the archetypal status of the warrior priest, the man who stands between chaos and order, between death and life, and holds the line. This is not cruelty, it is love. The gruff father who pushes his son to run one more lap, to do one more push-up, to get back up when he is knocked down. That father is not harming his son, he is saving his son's life. He is preparing him for a world that will not care about his feelings, that will not accommodate his weaknesses, and that will eat him alive if he is not ready. The modern world calls this abuse. The modern world is wrong. The modern world is a nursery for adult infants, and the nursery is on fire. You have just absorbed the antidote to a poisoning that began before you took your first breath. We have dragged the squirming, parasitic entities of feminism and critical theory into the blinding light of the logos, dissecting their viscera with the cold, clean scalpel of the trivium. You have seen the wiring behind the machine, the way cultural trauma is a fabricated ghost to induce guilt, the way the family court system operates as a state-sponsored extraction racket to punish male provision, and the way the phantom rival is a cheap emotional carnival trick designed to measure your subservience. We have shattered the illusion that comfort is the highest good, exposing it as the soft, feminine lie that unmans warriors and turns builders into beggars. You are no longer permitted the excuse of ignorance, the statistical reality of male suicide, the institutionalized theft of paternity, and the biological truth of female hypergamy are now as undeniable to you as the law of gravity. There is no returning to the anesthesia of the blue pill. To go back to believing the egalitarian fairy tales would be like trying to unsee a magic trick after the magician has shown you the false bottom in the hat. The modern world demands that you kneel to the idols of sensitivity and collective guilt, begging forgiveness for the crime of building civilization. You must reject this with the ferocity of a wounded lion. When you step into the forge of voluntary physical pain, whether it is under a heavy barbell or in the grueling crucible of endurance, you are not just building muscle. You are insulating your soul against the hysteria of the mob. Every time you refuse to validate a false accusation, every time you hold your frame against a manipulation, and every time you prioritize duty over the fleeting comfort of safetyism, you are reclaiming the inheritance that was stolen from you by cultural Marxists and their gynocentric enablers. You are reforging the virtue of courage in a world obsessed with victimhood. This is the moment of your appointment. I am arming you with a logic that is bulletproof and a rhetoric that is merciless. Your mission is to carry this truth into the wasteland. Build your parallel institutions, master the apprenticeship of your chosen craft, and ruthlessly excise the toxic femininity from your own life. Do not apologize for the West. Do not accept the framing of the oppressor. Speak the truth with the blunt force of a sledgehammer. Shatter the fragile glass of woke orthodoxy wherever you find it, and watch how quickly the shadows scatter when a real man turns on the light. The civilization of the good, the true, and the beautiful is not dead. It is waiting in the amber, ready to be resurrected by men who have the audacity to rule themselves. Go forth, speak the truth, and never bow to the lie again. And now the sponsored book introduction, Deconstructing Jacques Derrida, an in-your-face guide to eviscerating critical theory. You've been lied to, not subtly, not accidentally, but systematically by institutions that profit from your compliance, ideologies that thrive on your guilt, and a culture that mocks your instincts while exploiting your labor. I wrote this book because I watched friends and mentors crushed under the weight of a system that pathologizes masculinity while demanding men bleed for its approval. Academia betrayed me first. As a graduate student, I saw tenured Marxists twist logic into pretzels to blame every societal ill on toxic masculinity while ignoring biology, data, and common sense. Then came the divorces, good men stripped of their children, homes, and dignity by courts rigged to reward false allegations. Finally, the suicides, brothers in arms who return from combat only to collapse under the soul-crushing demand to be vulnerable in a world that despises male weakness. This isn't theory, it's survival. This book is for men who are done apologizing for existing. If you're tired of being called oppressor while footing the bill for a society that treats you as disposable, if you're sick of hearing toxic, slapped on traits that built civilizations, your home. If you still think gender is a social construct or that men and women are interchangeable widgets, put this down and go knit a sweater. For the rest, warriors, builders, fathers, what follows is your arsenal. Inside, you'll learn how Derrida's word games birthed the fake news era, why the Frankfurt School pathologized your father's authority, and how feminism turned marriage into a rigged casino. You'll get data-backed tactics to dodge false allegations, rebuild brotherhoods, and opt out of the simp economy. We'll dissect the lies about merit, masculinity, and equality with evolutionary biology, court records, and the cold metrics leftists ignore. This isn't a self-help book, it's a counter-strike. Your ancestors didn't conquer continents or reach the moon by nursing grievances. Neither will you. The road is brutal, but worth it. Let's walk it. Deconstructing Jacques Derrida, an in-your-face guide to eviscerating critical theory written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.